How do you tell the difference between a man and a legend?
There's only one athlete like this in the world today. André the Giant!
André the Giant was born in the fog of myth. His life was one of exceptions.
I just remember how intense it was.
I'm gonna tell you one thing.
Nobody belonged in the ring with André the Giant.
You're not sitting back, you're not sitting back now.
He's really a scary guy to work with.
What's it like to be 7 feet tall and weigh 500 pounds?
I don't make any plans, so just keep going.
Join us as we tell the tale of André the Giant. André was born in a small town in France. His parents were immigrants and worked a small piece of land. It was hard work, and the family of 7 needed all the help they could get. At 14, André's father decided to pull his son from school. If he was going to take over the family farm, like he planned for André, then education was a dead end. At this point, the 8th wonder of the world was already 6'6", exceptionally tall for his age, and he kept on growing. His parents thought nothing of it. They were happy to have a healthy young man of his stature helping out on the farm. André's siblings say he could do the work of 3 men. Despite his growing anomaly, André never went to see a doctor. It was simply out of the question.
I said to my father, I said, I don't want to live in a farm all my life. I want to do something different.
After some debate, he was allowed to start an apprenticeship in woodworking, which he never finished. When he turned 18, he was drafted into the French army, but they turned him away because they did not have uniforms that could fit him. So he moved to Paris to find work.
I tried to make a living, I tried to make money, and I want to be somebody.
He lived in Pigalle, a bustling but gritty area of the city. Maybe here, among the artists and bohemians, in the bars and clubs of this colorful neighborhood, he wouldn't stand out as much. André worked for a moving company, but hauling large pieces of furniture across the city hardly exhausted him. When he got off work, he would often go to the gym. It was here that he first came into contact with wrestling.
All the wrestlers was in the gym too, and we training together. And they showed me the way of wrestling. One day when wrestler was hurt and they don't know who's going to take his place, then they called me.
He fell in love with the sport and continued training with the others. Despite his imposing figure, he made friends quickly. Everyone who knew André says he had a wonderful personality. He had a reputation as a friendly, gentle giant, and also as a prankster. He liked to make others laugh. When he went drinking with his friends, André sometimes snuck out into the street and moved his friends' small cars with his raw strength. He would move them across the street or wedge them between buildings or trees. His friends couldn't believe he did that with his bare hands. The young giant soon caught the attention of French wrestling promoters who recognized his immense potential.
First thing I said, there's money to be made with the guy. And they did draw money.
Before long, he was touring the country as 𝗖𝗥𝗘𝗚𝗏, a giant lumberjack from the French Alps.
The backstory for the 𝗖𝗥𝗘𝗏 character was that he was, discovered in the middle of the woods, chopping wood.
His first gimmick sounds like a fairy tale character come to life, but his real life was anything but a fairy tale. Acromegaly is a condition that causes an overproduction of growth hormones in the pituitary gland. The results? Gigantism. André was 7 foot tall and weighed 309 pounds before the age of 20. Every living moment was a reminder that he was not made for this world. Every night he struggled to find a hotel with a bed large enough to accommodate him. As a kid, he couldn't fit in the school bus, so his neighbor drove him to school in the back of his truck, with everyone watching. When André tried to get into a car, it looked more like a circus act.
When I'm traveling with a car, now all those cars are so small, like I need 2 cars.
He wore rings on his fingers that were so large that silver dollars could pass through them. His hands were similar in size to those of a lowland gorilla. Due to his condition, he also struggled with fine motor skills. He could barely write, and his fingers were too big to operate the dial on a rotary phone without the help of a pencil. In 1970, Jean Ferret flew to Japan. He had to reserve multiple seats in first class to give him enough space. When he arrived in Japan, he realized all of his problems just got worse.
The worst trouble is when I go in Japan, and everything is so small over there. But
André could not use Japanese restrooms and sometimes had to use a bucket to relieve himself.
Have to draw the curtain, but this is the type of thing he had to endure every day.
It was in Japan that he first found out his enormous size was actually caused by a disease. Japanese doctors told him that he would probably die before the age of 40. Surgery was an option, but André declined. He said, "If this is the size God wants me to be, I'll be this size."
I use what the God give me. I'm not supernatural, I just myself.
Back in France, he returned to his hometown to visit his parents. But André had grown so much when he knocked on the front door, his parents didn't recognize him. They mistook him for a stranger. They had even seen him wrestle on TV without realizing the great Jean Ferret was their own son. He continued to wrestle as a main attraction at festivals in Europe. These are the roots of the business we have all come to love. Before the great superstars of the modern era, long before WWE, wrestlers were sideshow attractions at traveling carnivals and circuses. If André was born just 30 years earlier, chances are he would have ended up at a freak show. Up until the 1950s, there were dedicated freak shows that displayed human anomalies and biological oddities. This was often the only place for people with perceived deformities to find work. And since they were ogled at and ridiculed all their life anyway, they thought they might as well get paid for it. The last of the freak shows disappeared as people became concerned with the ethical implications of exploiting individuals with physical differences. When André the Giant came to America, wrestling still looked very much like a carnival attraction. Among acrobats and strongmen, André found his place in the world. He fit right in by standing out.
The friendly French giant, Jean Ferret!
André was everything a wrestling promoter dreamed of, literally larger than life.
And the Giant became a household name. They'd come from all over. You draw 3, 4, 5, 6,000 people at least 5 nights a week.
Anybody would pay a quarter and line up to see him.
In the 1970s, wrestling in America was divided up into territories.
I think at one time there were as many as 32 separate territories, and they were seen as far as your local television coverage would go.
Each territory had their own roster, their own stars. But André the Giant was in such big demand, he went from one promotion to another, wrestling throughout North America. His life became one big traveling roadshow, and he wrestled almost every day.
I like to make everybody happy, and that's why I'm traveling all over the world. I want to make everybody have the chance to see a giant, and I want to say hello to everybody.
He'd come in for a period of maybe 6 weeks or 7 weeks, and then was gone and on to the next territory.
André was really the only wrestler who at that time in the 1970s was booked on a national basis. So when pro wrestling was a regional enterprise, André was a national figure, which was totally unheard of in professional wrestling.
He was especially popular in the Midwest, Paul Bunyan territory. The local folk hero had a lot in common with André. Both were giant lumberjacks, both were riddled in myths, and both were very popular.
He was the kind of guy that people could relate to and felt that they knew the real André and that he was genuinely a good guy.
André chose to portray himself as a gentle giant. His hearty laugh and silly humor added to the character.
Even if you want to come in the ring, wrestling.
Indeed, Andre the Giant.
Andre was also very popular with women.
What females would tell me, you could feel more of, wow, Mother Nature has done something really magnificent here.
His charming personality won him more than a few dates. Wrestling colleagues say he was particularly fond of small Asian women.
And they were just little cheese-sized, little teeny 4'6", 4'7". Every time I was down there, they were always hanging on him, sitting on his lap.
You wear the size 24 ring, baby. What else can I tell you? And he's wearing size 24 shoes. What else do you want to know?
And I would draw these really elaborate X-rated cartoons. Andre the Giant would laugh so hard. Like, sometimes somebody would come in and go, Brett's drawing a cartoon, and Andre would actually get up and like speed down to the room to look in, and then he would just laugh so hard.
In 1973, Andre the Giant signed with WWF, a big promotion in the New England territory that would later become WWE. At this point, he was already one of the most famous people in the world. Vincent McMahon Sr. paid top dollar for the Giant attraction.
There was nobody else in the business at that time that you could say, hey, let me put this guy on your card, you're going to have an automatic sellout.
Nobody could beat him.
The one and the only Andre.
The Andre the Giant, ladies and gentlemen, is the only undefeated superstar in professional wrestling.
Anybody slam Blackwell!
If Andre came in and took on the local champion, if they could just get their licks in against Andre, if they could look good for 5 minutes, that was a win.
That guy's so big and so strong and such a monster, man. There was no way in hell I could beat him.
Andre was so big and so powerful, if he decided he wanted to win the match, then he would win the match.
He was stronger than all of us. He was bigger than all of us.
There were a few people in the locker room that Andre couldn't stand, like Big John Studd or Macho Man Randy Savage. If they rubbed him the wrong way, he would let them feel it in the ring.
Savage was totally terrified of Andre.
But if Andre liked his opponent, he would make sure to sell for him and make him look good.
Andre was very kind, and took care of, as we call it, the performers he worked with. He was very proud of that. He never hurt anyone.
He liked his image of the friendly giant. Even while beating his opponents to a pulp, he was grinning wide. His sheer size was intimidation enough.
And I just remember how intense it was. It's almost like the whole room moved when he walked through the crowd.
Once you saw what he did in the ring, how effortlessly he dismantled his opponents, everyone was afraid of him. Even big, bulky wrestlers.
Oh, yeah. If Andre didn't like you, man, he'd just slam you in the middle of the ring and sit on you and fart in your face. He would do that to guys. Really? Oh, yeah.
If he wanted to show you who was the boss, it was easy for him to do that.
Then he stood on me, walked over me with his foot.
If he just stood on my chest for maybe another 10 seconds, I'd say he probably could have killed me, for real.
Honestly, nobody belonged in the ring with Andre the Giant.
Backstage, Andre was generally a nice guy.
Andre, gentleman, through and through.
He was a very special guy, if you knew him. If you became his friend, he was a real friend to you.
Merci beaucoup.
Vous êtes bienvenue.
It was his big smile, sense of humor.
That song.
You have a song you sing?
The fish song.
The fish song.
Vince said Andre's requested that you travel with him. We became best friends.
But he had some moments too, when he was anything but a gentle giant.
Hey, the fuck are you doing there?
One time in Montreal, Andre was sitting at the bar, having some drinks before the show, when he overheard a group of 4 men talking about him. They said he may be big, but he's not strong. One of them gave him a friendly slap on the back to show off to the others. Andre snapped. He stood up and chased them outside. The 4 men stepped into a Volkswagen Beetle, trying to get away, but before they knew it, some uncanny force got a hold of the car and lifted it up so the tires were spinning in the air. It was Andre. Furious, he flipped the car upside down and fled the scene before police arrived. These outbursts of rage were rare for André, but when they happened, they were legitimately scary.
Do the bonus man!
Robin.
Yeah!
We'll do our best.
You better.
He has a long fuse, but I've never seen it blow quite so quickly as it did with you.
He knew he could do whatever he wanted, but usually he tried to set a good example because people looked up to him.
He kept everybody in line. And for those guys that thought they were tough guys in this business, André would straighten them out real quick.
André would test others, in the ring and outside the ring. If someone was scared of him just because of his size, he would give them a reason to be right. Likewise, if someone spread lies about him backstage.
The big Frenchman, he is mad.
But if you were honest with him and behaved like a professional around him, he was good to you.
Then André made me look like $1 million. Within the first 2 or 3 minutes, I had him tied up in the ropes and I'm punching on his head and stuff.
He's such a great man, you know, and a good man. I had no problems with him.
Among his peers, André the Giant became somewhat of a legend.
André commanded great respect.
His drinking capacity alone won over half the locker room.
He'd have him bring in a case to start the day, a case of wine.
By the end of the day, I'm not exaggerating, he had drank 20 bottles of Nouveau Beaujolais.
I myself saw him almost every night drink 7,000 calories worth of alcohol.
André was certainly, one of, if not the greatest drinker that ever lived.
André famously drank 156 beers in one sitting, a feat that, while not officially recognized, is often cited as a world record.
I said, you must have been drunk. He said, no, I didn't get drunk, a little tipsy.
To him, that wasn't even anything special. He did this almost every day, for years.
Because André, he drank constantly. He never, ever quit drinking. He drank from the time he got up to the time he went to bed. If he could figure out a way, he'd just done it in his sleep. Matter of fact, I don't think he slept a lot. I don't think he slept a lot at all.
André's illness was getting worse. His body never stopped growing, and his large size put enormous strain on his joints and back. He was in constant pain. He didn't always show it, but that doesn't mean he didn't feel it.
People think, oh, that was the first question they asked me, hey, do you go drinking with André? Wasn't it fun to drink with André? Because they think it's funny. But in fact, he drank because he was in pain. And I asked him one day, and he explained to me that his spine and his neck and his knees gave him a lot of trouble.
He was in a lot of pain.
André always played crib and had like at least 3 magnums of really expensive red wine was part of his contract. Every single day, every night, André, the only fuel he had was alcohol, and red wine was his choice of poisons.
André refused to let his condition define him.
We walked into a room, he knew what the reaction was going to be. You know, and it's not like he was trying to hide. André didn't try to hide. André was going to be André.
People have been staring at him his entire life. Everywhere he showed up, the attention was squarely on him. Every new face that saw this real-life giant simply going about his business as usual stopped and stared because they couldn't believe their eyes. What was normal to André was extraordinary and intriguing in the eyes of everyone else. In 1976, he appeared as Bigfoot in the TV show The $6 Million Man. André was perfect for the role of a gigantic mythological woodland creature. In real life too, he had been subject to a lot of ridicule. People made fun of him or invented stories about his abnormalities.
You could say anything about André and people would believe it.
Captain Redneck Dick Murdoch and Dusty Rhodes one time said that you have 185 teeth in your mouth because you're a giant. Is that true?
No, that's not true.
André didn't mind. He laughed with them. It sounds tragic, but this is his experience. In reality, he was very sensitive, but most people never saw that side of him.
But he told me, he says, you know, boss, sometimes they laugh at me, they point at me. It hurts my feelings. He would cry. You never think a guy like that would cry, but he would cry.
He often said he would give anything to live just one day as a normal-sized person.
It's difficult everywhere I go. They don't build anything for big people. They build everything for blind people, for crippled people, for some other people, but not for big people. So we have to fit in there. And it's not too easy all the time.
André the Giant loved wrestling. It gave him a platform to be himself, to read the story from his perspective, to be in control, and to fight back against people he didn't like. He loved this fairy tale version of life. He refused multiple surgeries that could have made his life easier and made him live longer.
He refused a lot of medical help during the course of his lifetime.
He decided that he didn't want treatment at that time because he thought it would interfere with his career as a wrestler.
In his eyes, getting treatment for his condition would only make him less authentic. He was willing to sacrifice everything for his career. That's how much he loved wrestling. And wrestling loved him back. André held a special status, and not just among his colleagues.
By promoters, producers, or handlers, André was to be treated as something special.
Yeah, he knew that he had the power to make careers.
André was also instrumental in turning the WWF from a regional promotion into a national wrestling powerhouse. Up until this point, wrestling shows were broadcast on regional channels. Over-the-air broadcast signals had a limited reach from the station where they were emitted. But with the widespread adoption of cable television and satellite distribution in the 1980s, television networks could reach audiences nationwide. Wrestling territories all over the country tried to profit from this new reach, but none did it better than WWF under Vincent McMahon.
I wanted to compete with everybody. The audience had never seen our show before, and it was vastly better than anyone else's because we put production value in it.
Vince also recognized the need for compelling, larger-than-life characters. One by one, he acquired the biggest wrestling stars of the time and swallowed entire territories on his quest to build the biggest, best promotion on the planet. The acquisition of André the Giant marked the apogee of this strategic development. André had seen the business progress from a fairground attraction to a nationally televised, must-see spectacle.
André did sports entertainment before there was sports entertainment. He had it figured out long before myself or Vince McMahon figured it out. He knew how to create emotion, energy, drama.
He was the embodiment of professional wrestling. No one could beat him. But after 15 years in the company, this became a problem.
Probably someday, I have to say that, probably someday somebody gonna beat me.
In 1987, André the Giant was 40 years old. He remembered what the doctors told him. He knew he wasn't going to make it much longer. André was much bigger now than he was in his early career. Hulk Hogan says they once weighed him at the scales at a baggage claim.
They always said he was the 500-pound André the Giant, but we weighed him at the scales at the baggage claim in Detroit. He was about 697.
At this stage, the gentle giant had trouble walking and sometimes used a cane. His iconic black singlet now helped hide a back brace that provided support for his ailing frame. In the ring, he could perform only the most basic maneuvers.
Because he'd gained a bunch of weight and he had that huge back surgery thing when he was in a ton of pain.
Constantly has one hand on the ropes, or he has his hands on his opponent he just needs something to steady himself.
So Vince came up with a plan. Hulk Hogan, the absolute top star at the time, should beat him at WrestleMania 3 in front of 78,000 people.
He was a bad guy. Who's going to stop him? Well, there's only one person who might be able to.
1,000 Hercules in one. The 24-inch pythons are undefeatable.
Hulk Hogan, champion for over 3 years. André the Giant, undefeated for 15 years.
It was just the right time, the right people, the right place. It was just all the perfect storm.
André's time was up, and he knew it. But there was one question that nobody could answer. What if André the Giant refused to take the fall?
A tremendous amount at stake.
because this is the final chapter that you can write.
Everyone backstage knew André wasn't a big fan of scripting. He just went out and did his thing, and he was never concerned about losing.
And everybody's like, so what are we doing? Like, the bell rings at the match before us, it's like their match is over, and it's like, we're up. What are we doing? And he's like, don't worry, I beat you with an elbow. And it's like, okay, well, how are we going to go into it? And he goes, don't worry about it. He walks out to the ring.
The understanding was André would sell anything that I did to him, but then at the end of the match, André was going over. André was going to get his hand raised.
André wrestled the match he wanted to wrestle, and when he was done, he would finish his opponent, go backstage, and drink. And nothing under the sun could stop him.
Wasn't sure how it was going to go down. I didn't have a problem with doing the job and André beating me. It made me just as big in my mind.
Pontiac, Michigan. André the Giant is getting ready for the biggest match of his career. He is sitting in his dressing room, finishing another bottle of wine to keep the pain away. As 78,000 wrestling fans are waiting for the biggest match of the century, there's a knock on the door. It was Hogan.
As we were sitting there, I said, André, what do you want to do out there? Don't worry.
Hulk came over a couple of times, said, we good, boss? He goes, I don't know.
Hulk realized this was no longer André, the gentle giant. Something changed in him.
André became bitter and jealous and evil.
André and Hogan had been a tag team before this storyline.
I can't think of a better partner, a better person that'll stand toe-to-toe and fight with me all the way than the big boss, André the Giant.
But now that they were feuding, André turned heel.
Look at me when I'm talking to you.
What is he doing?
You're bleeding.
We all know how the match went. André stuck to the script. He lived pro wrestling like few others. There was never a doubt in his mind that he would lay down to Hogan, pass the torch.
At the time, he knew much more than all of us. He knew that that's what had to be done to help Vince move this business forward.
Wrestling fan or not, everyone knew André the Giant. 7'5", 500 pounds, picked up and body slammed in the middle of the ring in front of 93,000 people. That moment can never be replicated.
The uncertainty around the finish was part of the storyline to maintain a level of mystique and drama around the biggest main event in WrestleMania history. It wasn't actually the first time these two faced off, nor was it the first time Hulk body slammed André.
Anything that happened before WrestleMania 3, forget about it.
In the late 80s, kayfabe was nearing its end. Vince McMahon himself broke down the illusion that wrestling is real when he publicly acknowledged his shows were scripted. He did this to avoid state taxes and licensing fees that would be due if wrestling was registered as a competitive sport. But to André, wrestling was very real. It was as real as the legendary tales told about him, just as real as his pain and his frustration.
So look at him in the rearview mirror. He was in, you could see it on his face, the pain he was in. I'd say, boss, you're all right. Don't worry, boss. He was so easy, even though he was suffering.
After years of legendary booze exploits, the French giant lost 90 pounds. Following heart surgery, he stopped drinking beer. But his extreme alcoholism carried on. He simply drank wine now, and lots of it. In January 1990, the eighth wonder of the world made his emotional farewell from the WWF. He was revered as a legend, and even if most wrestlers were terrified of him, they still respected him. When it came time for him to go, some colleagues expressed their admiration.
We didn't know, no one knew for sure when André was going to quit working or what his state was, and we knew it was getting harder and harder for him to keep wrestling. And André loved my cartoons so much that I drew him a big giant montage of all the wrestlers. Of course, it wasn't X-rated this time, but it was one with all the wrestlers. It actually had André carrying Vince McMahon, Hogan, and everybody was sort of, Andre was the center of the whole cartoon. And I remember we got every wrestler in the dressing room to sign it. I think I drew every wrestler that ever worked for the company while I was there. And I handed it to him. I remember he turned it over, flipped it over to sign the back of it. And I said, no. I said, it's for you. And he turned it back around. And he got quite choked up. He started to get tears in his eyes. Andre the Giant's getting emotional. I think it was maybe closer to the end for Andre than anyone realized.
In his late career, Andre found success in other ventures than wrestling. He particularly enjoyed his role in the movie The Princess Bride, a whimsical fairy tale.
Hello, lady.
Here he played 𝗖𝗥𝗘𝗗𝗏, a gentle, kind-hearted giant. Initially perceived as a villain, he ultimately helped the hero save the princess.
I just don't think it's right, killing an innocent girl.
Beneath his imposing exterior, there was a wonderful personality.
That's enough! That's enough!
No doubt Andre could identify with his role. One last time he put on a costume and entertained the world.
My favorite moment with him, Andre and I were on the boat alone with only the script supervisor.
Hello.
She said, tell me what have you enjoyed about it? He looked at her and he said, without skipping a beat, nobody looks at me. Like, yeah, he was just one of the guys.
But in reality, Andre's body was giving out on him.
He couldn't even hold me. I had to be hooked up to cables when I'm supposed to fall into his arms, and 100 pounds, he couldn't. It killed him.
Andre was often alone in his trailer, but he did make friends on set.
I remember he used to put his hand on my head, and when we'd be outside, and it was freezing cold where we were, and it would come down to here. His fingers would come here, and it would cover the back of my neck. His hand was so big, and it would keep me warm.
Fred Savage was a huge fan of his, and the two got along great. Savage says Andre sent him Christmas cards every year from that point on.
I remember making a point of shaking hands with him every day just to have the sensation of your hand disappearing into this mitt.
He also had a notable interaction with Chris Sarandon. When Sarandon came home from work on set for The Princess Bride, he told his two little children about the movie.
Then there's a sword fight, and then there's a giant, and as soon as the word giant got out of my lips, both of my girls perked up and they started peppering me with the question, what's the giant like, Daddy? How big is he?
Sarandon's children were fascinated by the thought of a living, breathing fairy tale giant.
So I go to Andre and I say, can the kids say, yeah, sure, boss.
Chris Sarandon went and took his children to Andre's trailer. They were overflowing with excitement to see Andre, the friendly giant.
And I'm holding one of my kids and my ex-wife is holding the other, and we walk up the steps and turn the corner and we look, and Andre gets up. And suddenly the reality hits my girls and they start screaming at the top of their lungs.
Disappointed, Andre sat back down. Sadly, he was used to this kind of reaction. Sarandon quickly took his kids outside and went back to apologize.
Andre, I'm so sorry. And he said, don't worry, boss. They either run to me or they run away from me. And that was his experience.
And I say all the time, I don't want to be the champion, I just want to be the giant. I just want to be only the giant.
All his life, he had been on display. But his unique perspective allowed him, too, to see other people in a special way. The beauty of the world to him had two edges, one of laughter, one of anguish. He learned early in his fairground days to distinguish between screams of pleasure and screams of horror. In his final years, he got away from it all. Andre retired to a small country estate in 𝗖𝗥𝗘𝗗𝗏, North Carolina. He said it reminded him of home.
He talked about the village he was from and his parents, and he just wanted to go back there. And he talked about this farm in North Carolina. He said he loves it because nobody looks twice at me.
Here, he kept largely to himself. His daughter, Robin, lived with her mother near Seattle. Andre made her the sole beneficiary in his will.
He wanted to be part of her life, but it just didn't work out that way. And it hurt him.
André enjoyed living a quiet life in the company of animals, who did not stare at him due to his size. He grew fond of QVC, a home shopping channel that carried everything from clothing to food and wine. Every movement stung with pain. Going to the supermarket was unimaginable. He raised horses on his land, but none big enough that he could ride them.
André couldn't fit on a horse. He was too heavy. We had guy wires from the ceilings being lowered, a 500-pound drunken giant.
His wine cellar, however, was one of the biggest and finest in the country.
Pour lui, il était en Caroline du Nord à cette époque-là, et qui lui a dit « Va voir ton père parce que c'est la fin ». Il a pris l'avion, il est venu, mais il avait du mal à marcher. Et il est venu, il a vu son père, mais c'était la fin.
In January 1993, he took a plane back to the homeland to attend his father's funeral. He rarely saw his family because of his busy schedule and the inconveniences of travel. But this time he decided he would stay in France a little bit longer to be there for his mother's birthday.
In the pictures, he just looked so bad. I don't know, it was almost like he already looked like he was dying.
Unfortunately, André passed away just a few days later of heart failure. Acromegaly, the condition that had plagued him all his life, finally sealed his fate.
You never know, maybe tonight will be my last night, maybe tomorrow will be my last night. So I don't make any plans, so just keep going.
We all have regrets in life, but I wish I could have been there.
Did André's passing affect you more than other passings?
He was special.
His remains were taken to a crematorium. Even after his death, his immense size still caused problems. His ashes reportedly weighed 17 pounds. They were scattered on his North Carolina property.
He was like a brother. He was like a big part of me. How do you replace that?
You know, André was great. Always never a bad word for anybody. You walk in the dressing room, it was always, "Hi, boss." Absolutely an unbelievable guy.
He was the guy, and he always will be the guy.
WWE honored his massive contributions to the sport and made him the very first inductee of the Hall of Fame shortly after his death in 1993. In 2014, they introduced the André the Giant Memorial Battle Royal.
Winning Battle Royals may have been a small step for André, but it was a giant step for me.
The first thing you see when you walk into the WWE headquarters is a massive 5-story mural of the man who personified wrestling like few others.
Aux arbres, à la forêt et au métier de bûcheron?
Plus pour l'instant. Maintenant, j'essaye de rentrer dans le catch.
It is through death that a hero becomes a legend. Through time, a legend becomes a myth. André the Giant is larger than life, and his legacy will never die.